Hello and welcome to Business Class. My name is Shantanu Prakash, and today we have a very special guest on our show, Ankur Bhatia. Ankur is the executive director of the Bird Group. The Bird Group is one of the largest travel and hospitality groups in India. In fact, their hold over the travel industry is so pervasive that Ankur was telling me that not a single flight lands or takes off from any airport in India without a touch point of the Bird Group. Ankur, welcome to the
Thank you.
show. It's
Thank
a pleasure
you.
to have you.
Thank you.
Ankur, you started a new brand in the hospitality industry, the Rosiat group of hotels, which is now 6 hotels, not just in India, but in the UK as well. And you were telling me that you started off at the young age of 19
Right.
by inking a joint venture with Lufthansa.
Yeah.
At the age of 19, most people are still figuring out what they want to do in life, or they're planning a backpacking trip to see the world. And here you rushed into a joint venture and got into serious business at a young age. So how did that journey happen? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Shantanu, I think it was very opportune or at that time, of course, or blessed, I would also say, for a simple reason that my parents gave me that springboard to do that at that given time. They had a great relationship with Lufthansa, and Lufthansa knew somehow that I was pursuing IT education in the UK. I was doing software engineering, and Amadeus, the global reservation system, was being set up at that given time. So the opportunity came to do some back office jobs for Amadeus here. They took an experiment with us with 10 people. At that given time, I was involved to just do all the LAN and computer setup. I was in touch with you also that time to buy computers to do that journey. Setting up those PCs, then setting up those processes, a lot of learnings happening at that given time, running off a conference room as a startup. But then I think that gave me, my personal self, a springboard to actually then take my entrepreneurial journey to the next level.
Ankur, you had just started a joint venture with Lufthansa, which was so pioneering that you had to literally rewrite government policy, even to give you a chance to exist.
Right, yeah.
And within a year and a half, you sensed another opportunity to bring Amadeus, which is one of the largest travel distribution networks in the world, into India. Most people would be very cautious. Didn't for example, your parents flip, saying that, look, why don't you stabilize something else, son, before you jump into something else? So where was that, sense of self-confidence, or would you call it a 19, 20-year-old brashness that you started to do big things at the same time?
Yes, of course, my parents were not extremely happy that I wanted to actually do that at that given time, at that given stage. But having said that, I think the opportunity was there.
So Ankur, you've been a pioneer in travel automation, and now hospitality.
Right.
And in some sense, you've observed the evolution of the industry. So do you sometimes have a sense of regret that some of the big stuff that we hear about in the travel industry, whether it is the emergence of Make My Trip, the rise of brands like Oyo, who raised billions of dollars of capital. And so don't you think that you as the pioneer weren't aggressive enough, and those are big opportunities that you missed sometime?
See, Shantanu, you can't do everything yourself. I tend to look to opportunities which I believe and feel myself that I can actually add value, and which is sustainable. Also, it is generational after one given time, because of the travel IT and stuff around that, where you're not actually creating physical assets, there always is a sunset to it. There always is somebody who's going to come and do something better to it. May it be an online travel agency, or may it be something else. I don't think over these years you've seen those generational things. Me thinking and getting into hospitality was very conscientious, because there's a legacy. When when you create a brand, you actually hand it over to generations for people to actually have to do, if you do a good job. It's the caveat here is, if you do a good job. If you don't, people forget about you very quickly. So I think that is something which I decided that I want to put my time, effort to do and build that on doing it. it.
So, Ankur, now you're about 46,
47,
47 years old.
yeah.
You started at the young age of 19.
Right, yeah.
So, the first phase of your life, I would say, till 2009, 2010, was really running these IT-centric
Right, yeah.
software style services
Right, yeah,
businesses.
yeah.
Then there was this big disruption. I would say now you said, now I want to set up my own consumer brand, which is a different ethic. It's a different DNA. You're imprinting some part of yourself in the minds of the customers who walk into your hotels. So how did that process happen to you? Because by all accounts, you were doing well. You didn't need to do this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is that entrepreneur bug which is there with entrepreneurs that, you always think, I'll use, kyo panga lena hai, but you do. You
Yes.
do. Unfortunately, you do. And once you do it, you can in and think of
But
it.
this is a big panga.
Yeah, it is a big panga.
You're
It's not a
one more
small
hotel
panga.
brand in the world. Not
Absolutely,
many
yeah.
people do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a small thing, and when you then start to play on that, it is then. I mean, I know entrepreneurs also try to gamble. So when they're in a casino, then they actually keep on putting in money till the time you don't win or you get to a point. And I think every entrepreneur journey is like that. Yeah, if it is your own money, there's two ways to do it through an entrepreneur. One, it's your own money, it's your own resources. Then is you're in that particular point that you keep on gambling till the time you don't get to a point where you're actually making money out of the casino. And then is when you say, okay, guys, now is where you do that. Or you have somebody else's money, then you are in that particular thing of doing, okay, let's do it, let's not do it.
Right.
Because it's somebody else's money and you're not that much involved. You've got yourself paid out.
Ankur, there are, I've observed many kinds of entrepreneurs.
Right.
And there is one kind who's very clinical. That look, I'm in this to make money.
Right.
I'll look at a business plan. If there's enough IRR, EBITDA, free cash flow, I'll use private equity, do this, and then I exit and I'm out.
Yeah.
You seem to be the kind who wants to build something that will last potentially for generations.
Yeah.
And also that you're following your own passion. So you were telling me that you got this inspiration of this, luxury brand because you were, different parts of the world. You've observed what high quality is all about, and you said, hey, there's an opportunity for me to do something. But, when you only look at things from a passion perspective, sometimes it also becomes dangerous because you're following your passion. There's no end to where you can follow it, and you can potentially lose sight of business economics. So how do you balance the left and right hand side of your brain while doing this? So easy to overspend.
It is, I agree with you. And we've done that previously in our initial bits of our development. So we've done that. I mean, obviously, we've done that. We've gone overboard of doing that in projects of ours. But then you come to a particular point when you say, is it required? I think then, I don't think that then ego or passion, I think that at the end of the day, you're an entrepreneur brain. Yeah. I mean, you know that whether this, I'll give you an example. My first hotel when I did, I had room automation in that. So I'd spend, significant amount of money in automating every room with Lutron and iPad controls and stuff like
There's
that.
probably your IT background coming
In and playing and saying that, yeah, we need to get this done. When I did my second hotel, I said, no, I mean, by the time I went to the second hotel journey, that was so painful because, guest dissatisfaction, some component of that not working well, high cost of incubation, high cost of maintenance, high cost of annual maintenance contracts. We said it does not make a huge difference if you were to automate
So
the
the
room or not make the room.
man inside you won the
It just says,
battle.
I don't think it's businessman. I think it's that does it make a huge difference to my guest at the end of the day? A lot of guests came in and said, yeah, where is my switch? I traditionally want to use a switch because that's what I use at home to switch on my light. I do not want to touch an iPad to do. Yes, I mean, people said, wow, initially of people saying that, yes. But then I think that charm sort of goes down a bit to do that. Then design as well. There are certain elements which might be required necessarily. There are certain elements which you can do off and then you can still create the same experience. So I think these things you get on from doing experience after you build your first, second hotel, that this is required, this is not required. This will add value tremendously where, at the end of the guest will come back to you or say, wow, what I think, or would not do that. And would that wow pay you back money? Maybe not. Don't do it. I think, this is a journey which you sort of learn through
a journey
development.
of continuous
Exactly,
learning
development.
and continuous
Exactly.
sort of
Or
improvement. Right?
And development as well, yeah.
You went to King's College and did software engineering. you haven't done an MBA.
No, I'm no,
Right,
no.
you probably employ a lot of MBAs.
I do, yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So you think learning on the job was better than actually going to Harvard, Stanford, or do an MBA?
I think so, yeah. I think learning on the job, learning with peers, learning with actual life examples.
Did you ever miss the
Expensive.
fact that you didn't do an MBA degree?
I don't know what it is like. You know? I don't know what it is like. I know of my people, of my peers, of my colleagues who've done Stanfords and Harvards and the OPM program. I want to do the OPM program, but I don't have that. I mean, obviously, I'm legible, but I don't have the time for taking 3 weeks out every year for. And I always want to learn and do educate. But I take little short times out. Like, for example, a couple of months back, there was a session at Facebook and Google headquarters. So I actually went off for that, for young presidents to see what the technology is and how the future is. So I take these short things out. And I think what's important for me now is that YouTube actually teaches you a lot. A lot of it.
And our interview is going to be on YouTube.
Is on YouTube
Yes.
as well. And such interviews like these, which if you were to look in depth, you'd see how people have actually performed. You see live examples of things and how people have changed or wanting to change things socially, practically, commercially, and all that. So you get a lot of learnings from that. And I mean, if you want to learn, you do today's days. I think education is on demand.
So, when you look at India and we talk about this massive demographic dividend, where there is this bottom of the pyramid opportunity, which I guess people like OYO are trying to capitalize on that. But you actually chose a contrarian approach in a so-called poor
Right, yeah,
country.
yeah. Go on.
You decided to build something at the
Right.
top of the
Right, yeah. Curve,
pyramid
yeah.
and take that also outside
Right,
of
yeah.
India. What were you seeing that other people are missing?
See, for me, I think a couple of things was that one of the things what I thought of was that the cost of real estate, if you build a 5-star hotel or a 4-star hotel, is the same. You probably can put in more rooms in a 4-star asset or a 3-star asset, but you can definitely put in, but you can definitely drive a higher ARRs in those rooms with a higher asset. You can actually make your assets sweat better when you're there at the top end of the game because you are there of that asset. Second is the branding there and the valuation eventually of the branding is very different to what you get to a 3 to 4-star asset. Third is that there was a gap in India as well of new generation, younger, freshness in hospitality of that level. So I think these opportunities were there in that particular frame, and I sort of looked into that, and I think that my mindset is now triggered towards that. We just recently did in my Rishikesh hotel, which was recently opened, we created spaces for our staff to stay. And those dormitories have come out so well that now my thought process is going on. I could get into that segmentation of hostels as well because it's
Yes,
the right combination of luxury as well as communal living, which can actually make a difference. So I might experiment with that in the future. But as of now, my journey is very focused on delivering great hospitality at affordable prices and on the top end.
So, do you think of Roseate as an Indian brand, and do you feel a sense of pride when you see this brand in the UK?
Of course.
Because a lot of Indian
yeah,
entrepreneurs
yeah,
are now, feeling that sense
Yeah.
of national pride.
Yeah.
I was speaking to Zorawar Kalra, and he says his life's mission is to put Indian food, in every major capital of the world and make it get the same respect that French cuisine potentially gets. So, how do you feel about?
I feel extremely
the
proud that
public
there's-
part of your brand, and when people interact and they know that this is something that
Indian
was
brand.
born in India.
Yeah. Well, extremely proud. But extremely proud when I go to my UK hotels. Of course, they're flagged now with the Roseate hotels or Roseate House London, the Roseate in Reading, which is the only 5-star hotel there, the Roseate Villa in Bath, top 3 hotels in that region. So I feel extremely proud because obviously it's, at the end of the day, it's an Indian brand with an international DNA. I mean, I would not have, my ethic is not getting people into wearing saris in the hotel. I mean, I think we're a bit beyond. A small thing which I do is that, we give a peda where of any guest who comes into the hotel or checks out, we normally say as an Indian small
that's your
gesture
Indian
of that
touch.
you.
there.
that मुंह मीठा कर अंदर लाओ या किसी को जब जा रहा हो तो मुंह मीठा करके भेजते हैं. So these are
Fantastic.
small little things as what we do for our Indianness. But yes, people know that there's a brand coming in from India, and this to the contrary. People ask me in India that so what is your tie-up with Roseate Hotels and Resorts? Where in the world they are there, and I tell them this is my own brand, and they said, oh yeah, wow.
So
man.
there's already a halo around the brand.
It is.
Hardly 3-4 years.
It's 3 years now, the brand, and people are sort of recognize that brand and say that it is an international brand. And I would also say that the way we position ourselves, especially in that sub-aero city, which has got whatever international brand you can think of. I mean, touch wood. I mean, our presence there and our share of that market is higher than some of the other international brands there. So what do you think about the new startup culture, Shantanu? I mean, do you think that burning private equity and pension funds money is going to last forever?
Ankur, that's a great question. A lot of people say that for years and years, when India was under colonial rule, all our wealth flowed out to the US and Europe. And now, in some sense, by investing in startups, it's actually coming back to India. So, more power to young entrepreneurs who are able to, pull in this foreign money. I think for me, the surprising thing is that most of this startup is actually fueled by mostly foreign capital.
It is.
There's very little domestic capital that is flowing into some of these so-called disruptive ventures, and in some sense that tells me that Indians are more cautious with their money. They rather put their money in fixed deposit, gold, real estate than in
hard-earned money, man.
than in startups.
Yeah.
So that's one element.
Yeah.
But secondly, I'm also a little bit disappointed that most startup ideas in India are replicas of what's worked in the US and Europe. So, for example, if OTAs worked in the US, there'll be somebody in India who says, I'm going to create an Indian version of it.
Right, yeah.
If transportation and mobility worked somewhere, somebody in India comes in, I'm going to do that. So, but we are still seeing the emergence of truly original and innovative ideas. In fact, I feel that those ideas are the ones which the large bulge bracket US venture capitalists are not backing. Those are Indian ideas. And I feel that Indian entrepreneurs like yourself should actually fund the ideas that are relevant to India, the India innovation, the Jugaad ideas, that I call it. But this entire startup, and I call this as the golden age of startups in India, this has spawned a whole generation of Indians who at least have learned to think big, who are actually now looking at disrupting themselves first and then the country. It's created innumerable job opportunities for young people. And I think in some sense, it's a great thing to happen in a country like India. But I think looking at your own journey of life, which I would, for want of a better word, I would call it cautious optimism. Grow with your own money, even if it takes time to grow. And I think that brand of entrepreneurship, moving away from this overnight success phenomenon. If someone were to ask you, Ankur, you're very successful, you'll probably tell them it took me 30 years to become an overnight success. Right. And I think young people need to understand that small is beautiful, that slow is fine. You don't have to become rich overnight and be completely unobsessed with this magic word called valuation. I think if they can take this word called valuation
away,
completely out of their dictionary and vocabulary, I think the world of startups would be better off for that.
I agree with you.
On that note, all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with us
Thank
today. The conversation with Ankur Bhatia, Executive Director of the Bird Group, was very interesting because Ankur is a typical entrepreneur who did not rest on his family laurels, rather used that as a springboard to take the next big leap. Of course, it wouldn't have been easy to start at the age of 19 and ink a signature joint venture with Lufthansa, who was this really big German giant, if it hadn't been possible to get both mentorship and financial support from the family. And a lot of young people would be satisfied in using that family background in the travel industry to simply chug along at a merry pace. But Ankur is special. He took that knowledge, took that mentorship, took that domain expertise, and built a completely new business around it in the area of services, in the area of IT in the travel industry. Ankur comes across as this very cautious yet optimistic businessman who has this DNA of opportunism. And when he sees an opportunity, he knows how to grab it. For example, when Amadeus, one of the largest travel distribution companies in the world, was looking for a partner in India, Ankur saw that opportunity and grabbed it immediately. And one can see the same DNA manifesting itself again and again. When he saw a distressed asset in all the hotels in the US for Roseate House, he moved quickly. And even before the New Delhi property came up, the hotels in the UK had already come up. An astute businessman who's learnt literally at the counter. Ankur was telling me that when he was in grade 10 and his friends were playing cricket on the field, he used to go and sit at the counter of his parents' travel agency. And certainly the dinner time talk was on business and travel. And I believe that through a process of osmosis and the ecosystem that he was born in, Ankur clearly knew where he had to be. But he's taken it to a completely new level. And I think India being a country where 70% of all businesses are family owned, here is a great story of how to take your family legacy and amplify and expand it even beyond the wildest horizons that one could imagine. In fact, his big bold bet in the hospitality industry is a case study. Ankur didn't do that immediately. He took his time, he waited, he watched. He inked a joint venture with a big South Asian brand, Dusit Thani, to learn the tricks of the trade. He traveled across the world. When he was absolutely sure of the product that he wanted to do, he pressed the button on that. And once he pressed the button, there was no stopping back, there was no holding back to where his passion, his talent, and his clarity of thought could take him. He is not a man in a hurry, but then the lesson is men in hurry don't achieve lasting legacies. He wants to see the Roseate House flag flying in all the capitals of the world and create a truly high quality product that India can be proud of. A very different contrast with the slash and burn startup scene in India today. He doesn't want to take private equity. He's decided consciously that he doesn't want to go public, rather use the wealth to take care of the employees and to grow the brand. Seems to be very, very sure of himself. And honestly, I can't wait to see what the next big disruption from the Bird Group and Ankur is going to be. For sure, it's going to be something very special and something right up there in the quality and the value chain. Ankur is an inspiration and a case study for every family business entrepreneur in India who wants to take the legacy of their family to the next level.